Greetings. The Columbus Community Relations Commission and the United Way of Central Ohio Neighborhood Partnership Center would like to welcome you to the 4th Annual Neighborhood Best Practices Conference in partnership with Columbus City Council and Fifth Third Bank. The Neighborhood Best Practices Conference brings people from all over Central Ohio to foster networking, to learn about what works, and to inspire community engagement. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Napoleon Bell, and I'm the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the 4th Annual Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. Glad to see all of you here. A round of applause for all of you. You know, this year's conference is Innovations for Creative Communities, a holistic approach. A holistic approach, because that's the way that we do things here at the Neighborhood Best Practices Conference, because we make it happen and you can too, right? Right? All right. So we're going to have fun today, and I would like to, though, to at this time bring up someone who is very key to making our conference happen. And I said, as you know, before, that City Council was able to sponsor the conference, and it was at the lead and sponsorship of Councilmember Herschel Craig. So it's my pleasure to introduce City Council Member Herschel Craig. He's a lifelong resident of Columbus. He was sworn into City Council in 2007. He is currently the chair of the Administration and Veterans Affairs Committees. A veteran himself, he proudly serves in the United States Army, or has proudly served in the United States Army. Councilmember Craig has many accomplishments, and too many to mention, but please refer to your program that you have before you. Councilmember Craig was also the sponsoring member of council, partnering with the Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce Councilmember Herschel Craig.
Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, the mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., said this: "It must be borne in mind that the tragedy of life does not lie with not reaching your goals. The tragedy lies in not having the goals to reach. It is not a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled. It is a calamity not to have any dreams. It is not a disgrace to not reach the stars. It is a disgrace to not have any stars to reach." And then he says this most compelling thing: "It is not failure but low aim that is a sin." Good morning. I want to say to all of you, certainly, if you do me a great favor, would you give Director Bell a huge hand this morning? Also wanted to acknowledge all of those from United Way, that is the co-sponsor of this event. And if you will also give them a huge hand, Sharon Ware and the others from United Way. And then all of you. Today is about innovation. I see my good friend, the Reverend Norman, sitting right there, who is an architect and a minister. But all of you that are here today, about the business of our city, about the business of our communities and our neighborhoods. It is so vital, the work that you will be doing for all of us. It's clear to me we've got the President's Cup here. That's a major event. There's no question about it. I think the net results of that will yield millions of dollars for our city. We've got Scioto Mile and all of that and what that means for our city. But the truth is we cannot lose our neighborhoods. We cannot lose our communities. And that's why you are so vital to this process. On the one hand, we've got enormous great growth, and thank God for it. Our city is in a place, we're the 15th largest city in the nation. All of the things that we're doing are terrific. We've got so many number ones that we ought to be proud of. Number one zoo, number one library system. All of that. At the same time, we're struggling with this issue of poverty. And nobody needs to be left behind. We've got our children and our families. Too many of them are struggling. And so your input is vital to all of that work and what we do in our city. And so it's not hyperbole to say that your being here today will make all of the difference in what we do as a city. It's pivotal, your work. I'm living in a community where we have boarded up houses, where we've got young people that have been killed and young people that have been murdered, families struggling. But I'm convinced, and I am even more hopeful, that through your efforts, through your work, and by this conference, we'll make the difference in all of our lives around the city of Columbus. God bless you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Craig. You know, he's always been a staunch advocate for communities and making things happen, and he's always been with us throughout these Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. He's also over our office as far as the liaison to City Council, so we appreciate everything that you do in supporting our communities here in the city of Columbus. Next up, you know, as we do, we have partners in this, not, you know, because we could not make it happen without you. So with also with United Way. United Way and our office, the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission, has been in partnership since the beginning. United Way has always been there as the backbone with this, and I, you know, not only United Way, but more specifically, Herschel Craig said Sharon Ware. And Sharon Ware, if you could give Sharon Ware a round of applause for really putting her life into this thing. You know, there are, and we're going to speak about the committee members at lunch, but I'm just so proud of the committee that was put together really to make this thing happen each and every year. But like I was saying, with United Way, they have been our partner with this and collaborating with us. And not only this, but we're looking at some things going forward from year to year. So we're really happy to have this partnership and continued partnership. So I'd like to bring up Mr. Ryan Edwards, who's the Senior Impact Director of the United Way of Central Ohio Neighborhood Partnership Center.
Good morning and welcome. That was pretty good. Good morning. Good morning. All right. I am Ryan Edwards. I lead the Home Impact Area in the Neighborhood Partnership Center at the United Way of Central Ohio. And we really appreciate everyone being here today. This really is one of the centerpieces of the work that we do at the Neighborhood Partnership Center. We're very excited to be able to share that with you. I do want to thank the City of Columbus, specifically the Office of the Mayor, the City Council, and the folks, the Community Relations Commission led by Napoleon Bell. We couldn't have done this without the partnership with the city. Thanks are also in order to other elected officials and community leaders who are here today in support of Columbus neighborhoods. We cannot thank the downtown high school enough for allowing us to use this space. This has been a wonderful facility for the conference throughout its history, and so we thank them for allowing us to be here. I also, you've heard mention of the volunteer committee who's helped to organize this conference today. I do want to, again, shine a light on my colleague who this conference would not be possible without, Sharon Ware. You'll hear Sharon's name a lot, but she's been instrumental in making this happen. She's nonchalantly walking over like she knows that she doesn't think I'm talking about. But Sharon, thank you so much for your support. I also want to recognize Gail Gray and the staff at the Community Relations Commission. Everyone's hard work and partnership has made today happen. I also want to mention our friends at Fifth Third Bank for their generous sponsorship of our lunch today. And finally, and most importantly, I want to extend my gratitude to all of you, the residents who live in and care about Columbus neighborhoods. It's because of you that this conference exists. See, it would have been very easy for each of us to stay in bed this morning, spend time with our families, but you care enough about your community to be here with us. That makes us very happy, so thank you so much for that. As many of you know, United Way of Central Ohio is committed to improving lives and strengthening communities by focusing on the building blocks of a better life. We do that by focusing our time and efforts on the interconnected issues of education, income, health, and home. In the summer of 2012, just last year, an effort to get to know the community better, to learn about its needs, and to improve our own work, we conducted a series of community conversations throughout Columbus neighborhoods to get a feel for how people felt about their communities and to identify what would make their neighborhoods better. And as I've had a chance to meet and greet with many of you this morning, some of you were involved in those community conversations, and we thank you for participating in them. They really help to shape what our strategies look like and shape what our investments into great programs that happen throughout this city are going to be in the next several years. So we thank you for that. What we heard during those conversations were concerns about safety, housing, needed improvements to infrastructure. But what really stuck out to us in those conversations was that nearly every one of them included a discussion around community engagement, how important it is to know one another, understand what's going on in each other's lives, depending on each other, doing neighborly things like being able to grab a cup of sugar or a stick of butter when we're in need, being able to watch out for each other's houses when we're out of town or away on vacation, sharing stories about our kids and about our kids' as they move out into the world. These are pretty simple human interactions. Much of what we heard were nostalgic stories that happened on front porches and front yards. There were stories that happened in a time that's gone by, and people miss that. They want that same type of interaction and relationship with their neighbors today. But for some reason, many folks feel that that's been lost. As we digested that information and our staff began to wonder what's happened in the past 50, 40, 30 years that's changed that culture, we could say that there are different reasons that that's happened. Changing values, technology, phones, video games, television, need for privacy, safety issues, which could kind of take us down a path in a much larger discussion. But what we do know is that people still want connections in the places that they live. We want a sense of community. We have a desire to be part of something special in our neighborhoods. And that desire tells us that the possibility of making that happen again is not lost. Now, all of us in the room are going to fall somewhere on that community spectrum. Some of us are experiencing the type of connections that I'm talking about. You've done the legwork to bring your community together. You've rallied around one another to create great places. Some of us, however, have no connections to our neighbors. We have no sense of community or understanding of what is or what could be in the place that we call home. We might know that there are issues that we'd like to address, but we don't really know where to start. So for those of us who fall in that latter category and you need a place to start, we think that that place is here today. For those of you that fall in the first group and you're already doing great things and have made great connections in your community, I ask you to embrace those of us who need an idea, a spark, or a nudge to get going. Share with us your approach and encourage us to make it happen in our community. That's what today is about. Making connections, learning from one another, sharing experiences. It's our hope that you take that information back to your neighborhood, make an impact in your community, and come back next year to the 5th Neighborhood Best Practices Conference and share your stories of success with next year's new and hopeful leaders. Now, are we inspired? All right, I'm going to do a little bit of an interactive activity real quick. I promise it's going to be pain-free. I'm going to list off, I was going to say painful. It's going to be pain-free. I'm going to list off several issues that we heard during those community conversations that we had last year. I'm going to list things that neighborhoods said that they're dealing with. What I want you to do is to listen to the words that I say, and when you hear one that resonates with you as something that you'd like to improve in your neighborhood, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and keep it raised throughout the exercise. It's going to be short, I promise. And then certainly feel free as I roll through them to raise more than one hand, and as you run out of hands, if you want to give me an amen or however you want to indicate that it's something that you would like to change. So we got it. I'm going to roll through the issues, and you're going to raise your hands. Things that you'd like to see improved in your community. Job opportunities, safe, decent, and affordable housing, neighborhood beautification and cleanliness, education, youth activities and opportunities, crime and safety, understanding of public services, improving neighborhood leadership, knowing your neighborhoods better, creating a sense of community. Now, there are many more that we could list here, but as you look around, hands raised. All right, we're going to do it. All right, but as you look around, everyone or almost everyone in the room has something that they want to improve in their community. They're seeking answers too, and the point is that you're not alone. We're all in this together. Thank you for helping me prove my point. You can put your hands down. Each of us in the room have talents, and we can use those talents to be an agent of change in the places that we live. So my challenge to you today is, as you move through the day and you hear ideas for how you can improve the condition or conditions that you've just raised your hand about, I ask you to identify how you, not someone else, but how you are going to use that information to do something for your community. How will you use your talents, whatever they might be, to shepherd the change that you want for the place that you live? I hope each of you will accept this challenge and use it as a catalyst to make great things happen in your neighborhood. Again, United Way of Central Ohio is very proud to co-host this conference with our friends from the city of Columbus. Thank you again for being here. Listen, learn, make it happen today. Thank you so much and have a great day.
So, with that, we're going to kick this off, our afternoon, our lunchtime off with the video, and what better is to kick it off with the video that was made and put together by a lot of our young people in the community. So it's a community video project done by Kim Ko Designs, Monica Guidry, Transit Arts, CK Productions, the Highland Youth Gardens, and Mills James Creative Media. And also a very special thank you to, I believe it's Kudo Abibido? Did I get that right? New Harvest Cafe and Urban Arts Center in Linden and the 4-H Linden Youth Empowerment Project. These young people spent the summer growing food and growing community. In partnership with OSU Extension, these young people are being engaged, educated, and empowered through service and leadership. Now the portion that you're going to see is just a part of the video because it's about 13 minutes long, but we're going to play 6 minutes of it. You will be able to go to our website and also United Way's website to view the whole video. So we want to make sure you do that to capture and see what our young people are doing out there. So hopefully we'll be able to get this started for you.
What does community service mean to you?
Everybody comes together for a greater goal in the community.
I think just making a difference, letting your voice be out there.
Any little thing that you can do to impact somebody.
Why do you think community service is so important?
It helps the community and it helps other people do what they can't do. I just love to help out others.
It's made me feel great because I was doing something for the community. We care. We want to help people.
We can actually do something. We can make change. Pretty soon, we're going to be the ones sitting back. We can't do it. We need someone to take those reins, to take concern about their neighborhood, about how it looks.
That's what the 4-H is all about.
Community impacts. Eastmore Academy.
We are Transit Arts, Old Town East.
CK Productions, Southside.
Well, 4-H is a really good program because the meaning of 4-H is hands, health, heart, and head. Hands is working in our community. Health, bring out the healthy things like growing natural plants. Heart, putting your best effort and all your heart into it. And head, learning from this experience.
It really gives you a lot of opportunities. You know what I'm saying? Some kids, they come in this program and you really want to realize like, what their background really look like or how they really act of their lifestyle. And you can really change their life by just one simple thing.
It taught me a lot in this program. It taught me a lot about leadership, and for us helping in it is like doing things like this.
Most of these kids, they would never get an opportunity to plant a garden without us. It's just a good way to give back, teach kids something.
Community service to me is just basically like you're volunteering to do something for a good cause. You know what I'm saying? And you just doing something right and putting a smile on everybody's face and just keeping everything positive, nothing negative.
To me, it's basically just like helping people, giving back, letting kids to learn new things.
It means showing good leadership in our community. Like once you put something out there forward and somebody sees that, they usually be like, oh yeah, I want to do that too.
I don't need you to love me.
I come from a family of givers, and so I grew up giving. And then once it caught on here, we had like 5 or 6 students, and the kids wanted more. I saw the looks on the kids' face, on the homeless face. We started working a lot with the homeless, and it just spread. Every time I put up a sign-up sheet, it would be filled in 5 minutes. And so it just grew and grew, and so now we're up to 300 people in the impact team, and last year we did over 50 projects.
I think my favorite community with the Impact Team event was my first time actually serving for Faith Mission, because it was just so heartwarming to meet so many people and just sing to them. And you don't know what their day could have been like, you don't know what they're dealing with, but when they came, you couldn't tell them that they weren't the happiest people in the building.
We have a camp that in the middle of November, the coldest time we can find, we'll have 100 or so students sleep outside in cardboard boxes, eating over a fire and all that, just to simulate what it's like to be homeless, so we can have a deeper understanding of why we're out here doing what we do.
We went to Holy Rosary, which is a soup kitchen on the west side. They give out leftovers at the end of lunch, and people would come up with plastic grocery bags, and they're piling mashed potatoes on top of mac and cheese, on top of green beans, on top of anything, just so they have dinner. And I'm like, that's, we can do something about that. They don't have to eat out of a plastic bag. So I started Operation Leftover here at the school, and so people brought in plastic or styrofoam leftover containers, and we wrote like messages of hope, and then we donated them back to Holy Rosary so that the people can then use them to take leftovers with them.
If you could spend one day in my shoes and to see the type of kids that I see on a daily basis and to see the need for the impact team, then you're going to say everybody I talk to would want to be in my shoes, want my job. These kids are unbelievable.
I would want my community to know that there's more to it. You don't have to be that person that sells drugs because you feel like, oh, I messed up in school, nobody ever took care of me. That's not true. There are people out there to this day that even if you think it's too late, they'll help you.
This change you want to see in the world, it starts with you. You can go outside, pick up trash in the neighborhood that you live in, or just your lawn. You can ask someone how their day is, actually try to hear someone's story.
It's more to the world than just your neighborhood and stuff like that. Like a whole bunch of young guys my age and young people my age that think that the world revolves around them, when in reality that they're just, 1 in a billion and stuff like that. So I really want them to open their eyes and realize that you can't just be out here doing what you do forever, because eventually you'll get older and start looking back on the mistakes you made in the past, and you don't want to be that person that regrets everything that they did.
Go out there and help. Be that change you want to see.
Once again, a round of applause for that great group of young people that put that together. Mills James, who made it happen. Appreciate that tremendously. Wouldn't it be great to have videos like that are played on the evening news all the time? Positive things that our young people are doing. Let's see some of that more often. I always challenge people, if young people are doing stuff out there and doing some great things, I like to see that. I like to see you send it in. Videotape it, send it in. We'll put it up on our website. We want to put together a page on our website that really highlights what our young people are doing, so that we can see the good things that are happening with our young people in Columbus, rather than some of the things that the few that choose the wrong path at certain times. So what this comes down to is, something that I want to talk about, and is owning the responsibilities of our city, of our community, of our neighbors, of ourselves. When it comes down to working with the neighborhoods, I hear they need to fix it. They need to do it. They don't care anyway, so why bother? The government needs to do it. The city needs to do it. When have you heard these statements? Wait, don't tell me. You hear that when you see that somebody else's something needs fixing and you don't want to do it. You've tried to help someone else to do it before and ended up all but doing all the work only to be treated like you did nothing because most folk don't know how to appreciate a hand up. And if they do, they have a strange way of showing it. That has got to be because I've heard a lot of creative names that parents have given their children over the years, but I have yet to meet the parent who named their children they. Perhaps this is a proverbial they is really a cliche for someone else. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak during this very special occasion, the Neighborhood Best Practices Conference. So during the next several minutes, I would like to share with you a little bit about our office and a few stories that I hope will inspire you and give you a call to action to own it. By continuing to fight the good fight, I want to make sure that you just don't go home, shut the door, and shut down. You get involved and stay engaged. We cannot afford to live within my four and no more. If our communities are going to be alive and well, I hope each of you will leave here saying, I own it. I own it. What does it mean to own it? Owning it means it's yours. You are responsible for maintaining it. I own it at home. I own it at work. When I was a police officer, I held the attitude that I owned the precinct that I served. In my mind, I didn't borrow it. I owned it. There's a difference in the way you treat something that you own versus something that you might borrow. When you borrow, it's someone else's responsibility to take care of it. Someone else's responsibility for fixing a leak, someone else's responsibility for putting a fresh coat of paint on the building. Who cares if there's trash in the yard or graffiti on the walls? It's not mine. It's not my problem. Our community cannot simply afford to have that attitude. Let me make an I statement here, because I am in this with you. I cannot afford to have a bad attitude. You see, the only way for the precinct to be the very best that it can be for each person is to have the attitude of, I own it. When you own something, you take responsibility for it. You care for it. You care about what happens to it. You care about the people in it. You don't look the other way and pretend that nothing happened. So I went to work as a police officer each day and held the attitude that I own this precinct. Owning it made me look at the precinct through the eyes of an owner. I talked up the positive while still addressing the negative. Owning it means that I own the problems of the precinct as well as the pride of the precinct. Since I owned the precinct, I cared about it. I wanted to clean up the area not only of crime, but of the physical blight, house by house. There's a story about this one lady that I spoke with had a basketball hoop in her front yard. The problem was that the grass in the front yard had worn down and ground into dirt from the countless hours of friction from fast feet and dribbling, and old food containers and wrappers were strewn about the yard. The resident and I exchanged greetings, and while the two of us were talking, I asked if she would consider putting the hoop in the backyard. She replied, "What do you think this is, Arlington?" To me, it was the best community in the city, but the statement just reaffirmed my thoughts and problems with attitudes within communities. Sometimes the negative attitudes come from the people who have tried to make a difference and are so disenfranchised. They no longer feel empowered. Commonly, I hear it's been that way for 20 years. It's going to be that way for another 20 years. We must empower one another to make a change. Celebrate the change rally, get the media involved, tell others about the great news. Positive change is contagious. People want to be a part of a positive change. People want to be around success. I could stand up here and talk all about the issues in the city of Columbus, from crime, drugs, vacant and abandoned houses, but that's talking up the negative. I'm here to concentrate on and talk about the positive, like Mayor Coleman's initiatives such as the Capital Kids program, the APS program, the Scioto Mile, the Southside Revitalization, King Lincoln, and Restoration Academy, just to name a few. We spend too much time talking about the issues of what's negative, and then some media often broadcast the negative, which overshadows all of the good things that others are doing to make a positive change. We must continue to focus on the key areas, such as a good quality of life that allows each of us to do our best and be our best. We need to be able to raise our families in a safe, loving, nurturing environment and giving back to the village that supports us. Our office, the Community Relations Commission for the City of Columbus, is here to support the work that community does to make a difference. We also help to address issues of youth education, homelessness, poverty, diversity, community police relations, and we also enforce the Civil Rights Code. But we also facilitate conversations, hosting conferences, and supporting community initiatives. I know that I'm preaching to the choir when I say that it is important to own it. You get it. That's why you're here. What I like the message of I own it to do is address the indirect enemy of ownership. The enemy of ownership is apathy, also known as indifference. When you have the attitude of apathy and indifference, you have grown tired, too numb, and too oblivious to even care. You know, an elder friend of mine recently told me that he's been through so much and seen so much that he no longer cares. I am tired of being tired, he said. I said, what? No, we can't afford to be tired. Our children and our families are falling behind, that if we don't put people behind them to give them a boost, we will all fall behind. You know, the Bible says that we are to love thy neighbor as thyself. The enemy of love is hate. It is not hate, it is indifference. As we know, love and hate are both passions. Apathy and indifference are void of feelings. We must love our neighbor enough to lend a hand. So, you know, if you're out there, you see a single parent in their neighborhood struggling to make ends meet, do more than just pray about it or refer them to a social service agent. Make a home-cooked meal and invite them over for Sunday dinner. Make a home-cooked meal, make the conversation at the table pretty fun. You know, tell a few jokes, you know, even if they're corny. Lighten their load if it's only for 90 minutes. You'll probably find the joy that you bring to them, you also bring to yourself without even knowing that you needed it. You must be your brother's keeper. It's amazing what you can learn about someone and their gifts and talents they have to give when you take the time to get to know them. You know, we talk about our glass full, you know, and our glass, is it glass full or is the glass half empty? Well, you know, sometimes, you know, I try to make sure my glass is half full. But sometimes as you think about, you know, putting, you know, poison in a glass that's half full, and it keeps getting darker and darker. Well, it's still half full, but it's full of poison. So sometimes those persons enjoy putting poison into our glass half full. So we have to make sure that we get that out of us in any way that we can. You know, why they do that, you know, and not get involved in your communities, I don't know why. Maybe it's because people are so distracted by their busy lives, you know, and so you have to ask yourselves, are you your brother's keeper? You know, and a brother keeper reminds me of this story. So let me tell you this quick story. One day, a rat looked through a crack in the wall to see a farmer and his wife opening a package. What food might it contain? The rat was shocked to discover that it was a rat trap. Retreating to the farmyard, the rat thought about the best way to announce the imminent risk. Should he send a text? No, the issue was too far and too important to potentially fall upon deaf ears. Should he send an alert via Facebook? No, he learned early on that you face your problems, you don't Facebook your problems. He said to himself, though high tech is good, high touch is better. So he decided to do the old age, tried and true face-to-face conversation with the people who had the power to do something about the dilemma. He went to the chicken and said, there's a rat trap in the house. There is a rat trap in the house. The chicken clucked and scratched, raised her head and said, excuse me, Mr. Rat. I can tell you that this is a grave concern to you, but it is no consequence to me. I lay 2 eggs a day, a feat that makes me the most productive and most valuable of all the hens. It takes time and concentration in my busy schedule to do what I do. Any disturbance to that peace and harmony of my life will make me as average as any chick. I simply cannot be bothered by it. The rat assured her that he would meet his doom if she didn't help him. Her reply, I got to where I am today because I work hard. I got mine. You rats need to do your part and stop looking for everyone else to solve your problems for you. Am I my brother's keeper? The rat turned to the pig. Because he knew the pig was a Christian, he was sure that he would care. The rat told him, there's a rat trap in the house. There's a rat trap in the house. I am so sorry, Mr. Rat, sympathized the pig. Oh, brother, I have every faith that things will work out for you. Be assured that you are in my prayers. Well, the rat turned to the cow. The heifer said, so sorry for your troubles. Good thing rat traps don't affect us cows. The most it can do to us is give my hoof a little pinch. I'm sorry, Mr. Rat, but that's all I can do is take care of my four. I'm already overworked and overstressed, and I can't take on anymore. So the rat returned to the house, head down and feeling rejected. He wasn't looking for a hand out. He was looking for a hand up. Instead, he got the hand and was forced to face the farmer's trap alone. That very night, a sound was heard throughout the house, like the sound of a rat trap catching its prey. The farmer's wife rushed to see what was caught in the darkness. She did not see that it was a venomous snake whose tail was caught in the trap. The snake bit the farmer's wife. The farmer made the 60-minute trek to the hospital from their rural home. He put the pedal to the metal and got her there within 45 minutes, as in any man who would do who loves his wife. She was shortly treated and released, although she returned home with a fever. Not everyone knows you treat fever with fresh chicken soup. So the farmer took his hatchet to the farmyard for the soup's main ingredient. The poor chicken didn't see it coming. She was the farm's #1 egg layer. She still had a few good years left. She may not have been her brother's keeper, but she did keep filling Mr. Farmer's bowl. His wife's sickness continued, therefore friends and neighbors came to sit around the clock. To feed them, the farmer butchered the pig. It seems that Mr. Pig's prayer for the rat helped, but his misplaced faith got the best of him. The farmer's wife still did not get well. She died eventually, and villagers came to the funeral, and now the farmer had the cow slaughtered to provide meat for all who came. The cow was so focused on taking care of her four and no more, she failed to see that the warning when it was presented to her by the rat. The moral of this story: the next time you hear that someone is facing a problem and think that it does not concern you, remember that when there is a rat trap in the house, the whole farmyard is at risk. If you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. So yes, I am my brother's keeper because I own it. You know, it is essential for all communities, black, white, brown, no matter what your background, to come together and work together to own it. It was not so long ago with the civil rights movement, the faith-based and young people were the backbone of the movement. And they communicated and worked together face to face with persons of all faiths and congregations. Lord knows the civil rights movement is not over, and we must continue to fight to just maintain what our young and old predecessors fought and died for. So let's come together. You know, I own it. I do own it. Do you own it? So with all this being said, let me hear you say, I own it.
I own it.
No, you gotta let me hear you say, I own it.
I own it.
Okay, I need you to stand up and point at that camera and say, I own it. All together. Stand up, point at the camera, and what do you say?
I own it.
That's right. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our country needs you. Our city needs you. Your neighbors need you. I need you. Our Mayor Michael B. Coleman, needs you to own it. And speaking of Mayor Michael B. Coleman, you know, he began on council 1992 and later president of council from 1997 to 1999. He owned it. Mayor Coleman was first elected in 1999, was re-elected in 2003, 2007, 2011. He created the Home Again program, impacting more than 1,000 vacant and abandoned homes, created the Affordable Housing Trust Corporation to provide more housing options to inner city residents. He owned it. Created the Neighborhood Pride program, Downtown Revitalization Initiative, Downtown Park, Scioto Mall, and Columbus Commons. He owned it. Created the ongoing Get Green and Green Spot programs to inspire, educate the residents and businesses making efforts to protect our environment. Pushes for the major bike-centered city through the Bicentennial Bikeways Plan. He owns it. It is my pleasure to introduce our mayor, Mayor Michael B. Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great speech, Napoleon. How about that, Napoleon? Thank you very much, and it's great to be here with you. This is the fourth occasion we've had this neighborhood gathering where people talk about neighborhoods coming together, trying to solve tough problems in our city. And I want to say thank you to United Way and the City Community Relations Commission and everybody else has been engaged in this. But most importantly, I want to thank the neighborhoods and the neighborhood leaders that are here today. Because without you, we would be nowhere. The lifeblood of any city depends upon the strength of its neighborhoods. And I'm that one that believes that our neighborhoods are strong and getting stronger. We know what our problems are, we know what our challenges are, but we work every day to make it better, stronger and better each and every day. And I'm so grateful for all of you being here today. Napoleon talked about civil rights, about how it used to be, about everybody coming together to fight for a common cause, owning something, taking responsibility for something. Well, I'm here today to talk about several things, and that is what I believe the next civil rights movement in our country. And Columbus is the epicenter of that civil rights movement, and that's education. It is education. Who in the world thought that civil rights and education, what's the difference? Why would you call civil rights or education a civil right? Here's how I feel. I feel that the quality of education should not depend upon the color of your skin. The quality of education should not depend upon the language you speak. The quality of education should not depend upon the neighborhood you live in or the size of your pocketbook. Every child in this city deserves a quality education. Unfortunately, in America, it does depend. Unfortunately, in Columbus, it does depend. And frankly, I find that unacceptable. And so we must change it. The truth is, and I hate for you to hear this sometimes because sometimes the truth hurts. But here's the truth. There is a high tolerance for failure in low-income areas, in poverty-ridden areas in this city. Why do I say that? Because I just look at a map, and I look at where the good schools are and where the bad schools are. I look at where students are graduating from good schools and where they're graduating from schools that are not yet preparing those young people. And there's a map. You should see that map. There are some good schools in this city. We're very proud of them. We want to see more of them. That's the idea. But there are some bad schools as well. And 100% of the bad schools are in poor, disadvantaged, and minority areas. We got to change that. We have to change that. And so I say that education is our next civil rights movement. And so you've heard me talk about this, and I'm going to continue talking about it. We've intervened. Why have we intervened? Because over the past recent history of the school district, only 3,000 students have graduated from A-rated schools. Over 50% go to failed schools, and they're all in certain neighborhoods of this community. I find that unacceptable. And I think that the standard in Columbus ought to be that you come to Columbus and you want to make sure that Columbus has the best education for any child in America right here in the city of Columbus. That ought to be our number one goal in this city. And so that's been our journey, and that's been our intervention. And that's why I want you to support issues 50 and 51. It's important. It's important for our children. And this intervention that we've had in our city, this intervention that I've had, I've learned so much in this process. So much. You know, I don't control the school district. I don't control the schools. And they are in our neighborhoods. They are a foundation in our neighborhoods. And too often they're disconnected from what we're trying to accomplish in our neighborhoods. What happens if they become connected? They become the center of hope in our neighborhoods. And we build our neighborhoods with our schools. What have I learned in this process? 3 things. After not running the school district, not really being involved in school issues just every now and then on the periphery, the 3 things I learned is number 1, education policy. I know more about education policy and education in schools than I ever imagined I would ever know. I now know. I'm probably one of the most educated mayors in the country about education policy. Never thought that would happen, but here it is today. The second thing I learned in addition to education policy, is education politics. Now, I want to tell you about education politics. I'm going to take off my coat for this. Education politics, unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. Education politics is far more difficult than education policy. We all know what works and what doesn't work. That is known, and that's what we're trying to do with issues 50 and 51. Do what works to educate our kids. But let me tell you about education politics. I call it the blame game. Education politics is the blame game. And so here's how that blame game works. Is that everybody blames the other person for the failure of our kids in school. Let's blame the school board. Let's blame the superintendent. Let's blame that person down the street. Let's blame our preachers. Let's blame our mayor. Let's blame the teachers. And what I learned about education politics is blaming somebody else, pointing the finger at somebody else. But I want you to point a finger. Point a finger at me. Everybody point a finger at me. Point a finger at me. Go ahead. When you point a finger, how many fingers are pointing back at you? One at me, three at you. We got to change the conversation from assigning blame, blaming someone else, to accepting responsibility. That the person that really blames, the person that gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror, that's the person you blame. Because the truth is that education and educating our young people is everybody's responsibility, not just a few. And that we all have that obligation to raise our children, to embrace our young people, even if we don't have any ourselves. That in our neighborhoods, those young people are the ones that are going to be living in these homes, building our city, and they need to be ready for it. So we want to change the blame game to the responsibility game. And so when you take the responsibility, then what? You have the responsibility to fix it. And that's what 50 and 51, issues 50 and 51 does. Fixes it comprehensively. So we've gone from learning about politics, learning about policy, and here's the final thing I learned in this whole process. The third thing I learned in this intervention. When I go to community meetings, people say, "What's in it for me?" Policy, politics to what's in it for me? And a few of those nights I talked and tap-toed through that one and went through it. And then one day I said, you know what? This ain't about me. It's about him. It's about any other child in this room that's here today. It's about our children. It's about them. Not me, but about them. That's what it's all about. And if we can wrap our heads around that concept, that this is about the future of the city, the future of our children, and whether or not they're ready to do what needs to get done. Look at him, he's so happy. I'm talking about you. He's talking about me. You see, when that young man graduates, he's got on his football pants. Did you go to practice today? You have a game? Did you win? All right, you won. What's the name of the team? Rebels. The Rebels. All right. We need some rebels here. Rebel rousing. We want to make sure that these young people do one of four things when they graduate from high school. One, start a business. 2, go to the military. 3, go to college. And there's a 4th thing. And what is that? Remember? Get a job. That's right. Get a job. The obvious one. And what happens now is too many of our young people don't do any of those 4. Don't do any of those 4. And we've got to make sure, what's his name? Deshaun? Deshaun. He's ready to go either to the military like my son did, very proud of him, get a job, go to college, or start a business. One of those 4 things you should be ready to do, and it's our responsibility to make sure you have that opportunity. You first. Yes.
He's taking over the Start with That organization, actually. He's taking over family business.
He's taking over, starting a business. Oh, taking it over. All right, good. All right. So you already got it planned. Already got it planned. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so what does this have to do about neighborhoods? What does 50 and 51 have to do about neighborhoods? Well, first of all, it's all about neighborhoods. Because when I'm asked often, sometimes lately, I say, well, Mayor, what you going to do about crime? You know what I'm going to do about crime? I'm going to make sure our kids are in a classroom, not in a jail cell. There's no better way to address the issues of safety in neighborhoods than making sure they're educated in a classroom and not in a jail cell. Happens too much where they end up in a jail cell and they do something in our neighborhoods that puts them there. It impacts you directly, all of you directly. So, Mayor, what are you going to do about housing? Well, in addition to all the other things we're doing, I'm going to make sure that young person earns enough money so that they can become a homeowner in the neighborhoods. To make sure that there aren't vacant and abandoned houses, that there are people who have a job who can own that home and buy that home and live in that home and live in that neighborhood and have a vested interest in the future of that neighborhood. Mayor, what you going to do about jobs? You know what I'm going to do about jobs? I'm going to make sure that young person is qualified to take the job. To take the job. That's what we're going to do about jobs. Our unemployment rate is going down. We have jobs now. But our poverty rate is going up. And the employers are saying, get me somebody who's qualified to take this technology, understand this technology for this job. And if you can't give it to me, I'm going to go somewhere else and get it. That's right. That's the way it works now. So they ask me, what are you going to do about poverty? The best way to break the cycle of poverty is to educate oneself out of poverty. That breaks the cycle of poverty more than anything else. And so everybody's boat is lifted at the same time. Do you see the connection now? Do you understand what I'm saying now? This is important to all of us. So I'd like for all of you to vote for 50 and 51. Then I also want you to think about issues 1 through 4. And that's the city bond package, where we borrow money to build sidewalks, to address infrastructure, to buy the police vehicles and the fire vehicles. You like that one, don't you? Fire stations, police stations, all that is about borrowing resources. And I think we've proved ourselves, because this is, you know how you have to show your credit worthiness when you buy a home, right? You have to show your credit worthiness to borrow money in order to buy your home or to build your home, to get that mortgage. Well, City of Columbus has to show its credit worthiness to borrow money, and this gives us that authority to borrow money at certain levels. But here's what those who give the credit say about the City of Columbus. That we have the highest credit rating for a city of our size in the entire nation. AAA by all credit rating agencies. So, our credit rating is so good, it's better than the state of Ohio. Our credit rating is so good, it's better than the United States government. Our credit rating is so good, there are only 12 nations in the world that have a credit rating as good as the City of Columbus. And I've been told, and I'm not sure, but I'm going to say it anyway because I heard about it. And if I'm wrong, I apologize up front. But only 5 companies on the New York Stock Exchange has a credit rating as good as the City of Columbus. That's how good we are. And that's because you have trusted us to do the right thing with respect to those issues. So all the way through issues 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'd like for your support to continue that credit worthiness of our community. And I want to thank you. Let's just begin by saying this. I'm passionate about the City of Columbus. This is now my 14th year as mayor of the City of Columbus, and I've loved every moment of it. I think we have the greatest city, the greatest neighborhoods, the best people in the entire world right here. I have never seen a community come together in so many issues over time and see this city go through. I've seen it go from good times to bad times to crises to renaissance. We are on the verge of a renaissance in our community. And the reason we are is because of you. And we got to keep working, keep, as Napoleon said, owning it. Owning it. But I ask that all of us focus on our kids. Let's focus on our kids. Let's make them a priority. And I ask that you support issue 50 and 51 and support issues 1 through 4. God bless you.
"14 years. Goodness gracious. So what do you say about 14 more? What do you think? Thank you so much, Mayor, for those words of inspiration. I tell you, you've got a lot on the plate, but we're going to make it happen. So appreciate those words. Next we have coming up will be, I'd like to introduce Alicia Gillison. She's with Columbus City Schools, and she's in charge of the middle and high schools here in the City of Columbus. So if you come on up and say a few words, we appreciate that. Please, a round of applause for Ms. Gillison.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here, and I want to thank the United Way and everyone for putting this together and even inviting Columbus City Schools. I am here on behalf of Dr. Good, the superintendent, and I'm honored to greet you this afternoon, as well as the Columbus Board of Education. I want to welcome you all to Columbus Downtown High School and thank the United Way for having its best practice conference here at this state-of-the-art facility. I also want to thank United Way for the work it does to improve the lives and strengthen our community. We opened with a video. When you know you're in the right place at the right time, Jillian Baptiste, the young lady that was singing, her name is Taylor Mitchell. Yes, Derek and Courtney Avon. I know I'm in the right place at the right time. Prior to me taking this position, I was the principal at Eastmore Academy, and those were my seniors. That's the senior class of this year. I'm sitting there, and I hear her voice, and I look up. That's Taylor. What? That's Courtney. What? That's Jillian. That's when you know you're in the right place at the right time. What a pleasant surprise. On behalf of Dr. Good, I'd like to say It's clear that strong schools and strong communities go together. That's no secret. The programs you support directly benefit the students in ways to help them prepare for college, career, and a role in the local economy. When you think about the United Way and you think about how it works with communities and how it works with the schools, the investment in early childhood education, Community Care Day, Project Mentor, all programs that affect our lives and affect our kids. It's obvious that you recognize that many things influence a child's academic achievement. That's why the presence of the CEO, Janet Jackson, on the Columbus Education Commission was so very, very important. United Way understands the needs of the family and the whole child, and it has put its resources where education, income, health, and home initiatives can all come together to make a real difference and a real impact. Those young people that you see, those are real young people, come to school every day. Sometimes we cannot see the forest for the trees. These are the young people. You heard Mr. Green, the internship coordinator, talk about how it would be to walk in his shoes. I'm standing here. It was a blessing. I was honored to be the principal of Eastmoor Academy High School because those young people are real. And just being around them every day was a blessing for me, and it let me know what our struggle is and what our opportunities are. Neighborhood schools provide one thread of continuity between people of different races, cultures, backgrounds, and ideas. They not only provide the educational needs of an area, but it serves as a social connector. Mayor Coleman said it, every neighborhood deserves a school like Eastmoor Academy, and we are committed because we own it. Columbus Downtown High School. Let me tell you about this building we're in right now. Columbus Downtown High School opened in 2009, and it was formed along with Fort Hays Career Center, and it consolidated Southeast Career Center, Northeast Career Center, Northwest Career Center, and relocated these programs in centralized locations. This is one of those locations. Here at Columbus Downtown High School, we offer 5 career clusters. Business, so when you're talking about owning your own business, entrepreneurship. Education is a track, engineering, information technology, and personal services. The school offers 16 areas of specialization or career pathways. Students who choose to enter one of the programs here take full academic schedule while graduating from and participating in their home school. So they get the best of both worlds. Dr. Good strongly believes that we would not be able to offer these opportunities to our young students without the continued support from our partners in business, higher education, and from professional organizations. These partnerships lead to stronger students, stronger graduates, stronger businesses, stronger communities, and yes, a stronger Columbus. That's why, as a school district, Columbus City School will continue to explore all avenues to prepare its graduates for the Central Ohio economy. And this will be done by pursuing partnerships with the entire community and by developing stronger schools. Speaking of stronger schools, it's no secret that in Columbus, not every student attends a strong school. Too many of our schools are challenged, and too often neighborhoods surrounding the schools are challenged as well. I heard Napoleon Bell say, "Own it." I own it. And I'm going to take responsibility, and Dr. Good, as the interim superintendent, is taking responsibility. It is a new day, and we mean it. In fact, strong schools often become the heartbeat of neighborhoods, providing a source of pride and community centered for residents. I've heard Mayor Coleman say it. You heard Mayor Coleman say it. That getting a good education, it shouldn't depend on your income. It shouldn't depend on where you live. and it shouldn't depend on the color of your skin. Dr. Good agrees, and that's why we are all working so hard to improve our neighborhoods. We're doing this by recruiting and developing and retaining the best and brightest educators. We're doing it by providing teachers and children with facilities, technology, tools that are needed for an effective learning environment. We're doing it by adopting and fully using effective tools to measure student achievement and progress. And we're doing it by giving children early educational opportunities by opening 10 new pre-kindergarten classrooms. The district is making literacy for all students a key focus, and we are partnering with citizen volunteers to help. The reading specialists from The Ohio State University are working with more than 300 community volunteers so that they can work individually in small groups with students in elementary schools, helping them to build literacy. We call it reading buddies. And if you are interested in being a reading buddy, of course there's training, and I know you're saying, well, we can all read, but there's a certain way you read to these little people so that you get it. And you model for them so that then they want to model it for you. And you make it fun, and they don't even realize it, but you're teaching them how to read. If you are interested in being a reading buddy, please call Customer Relations at Columbus City Schools at 365-8888. That's pretty easy. I'll say it once again, 365-8888. And you're talking about the joy that it will bring to you and to that child. To know that you're coming in once a week, that will be the highlight of their day. And it'll also put a smile on your face. It's about owning it. Another way we're creating stronger neighborhood schools is by giving principals more authority for their buildings. You may have heard it, it's called our decentralization plan. Because who knows the school better than the principal? Who knows the students and the parents and the community? Who knows those challenges and opportunities better than the staff and the principal at the school? And in the past, we were making those decisions downtown. But downtown didn't know the culture of that building. I'm not from Columbus, but I can tell you this about Columbus. Columbus is the largest, but each school has its own unique climate and culture. And who knows that better than the people that are in the building? So we've let go. Now principals can make the decisions on staffing. Principals can make the decisions of how they need to spend the money to best serve their population and their students. The state's new teacher and principal evaluation system and the Ohio improvement process will create higher levels of accountability, because with that decentralization, and now this principal has all of that power, you know with that comes accountability, and we're going to hold them accountable. It is a new day in Columbus. Finally, just a couple of weeks ago, the Ohio Board and Mayor Coleman's office announced the High Performing Schools Initiative. This new initiative is designed to develop steps and standards for expanding the number of high-performing schools in Columbus City School District. The initiative will also produce policies and procedures to increase the number of students attending high-performing schools and to determine how the district will partner with community schools to replicate or expand high-quality community schools. This initiative will be overseen by a 15-member working group and consisting of parents, educators, as well as faith, business, labor, and civic leaders. Mr. Bell, we're owning it, is what we're doing. So those are some of the many things Columbus City School is doing to help students, teachers, principals, and neighborhoods, and the entire city of Columbus be the best. We want to be the best just like the credit rating, all right? We want a AAA. Dr. Good understands, and we all understand, that it's a lot of work to do. That is our reality. But once you own it, and you know what it is, you're ready to do the work. He believes the success of the November 5th levy addresses a concrete reform plan that our entire community not the Board of Education in isolation. He believes the success of the November 5th levy addresses a concrete reform plan that our entire community has developed for our schools to create a strong foundation for early childhood education, to provide appropriate classroom technology and learning environments for the students, to create and develop more A and B rated schools in neighborhoods across the city by 2020, and to create, recruit, and retain high quality teachers. Also, the realization of 21st century learning environment for our students. We are in the 21st learning century. It's time that all the schools moved into the 21st century. And to improve academic and business partnerships. Few communities have come together in such a way, and the United Way is one of the most important partners in this transformation. And Dr. Good is excited to be a part of the unprecedented changes that are occurring within Columbus education and occurring within our community. Again, I thank you on behalf of the superintendent and the Board of Education for what you've done, for what you're doing, and what you will do. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the forest and appreciate the trees and own it.
There's a very, very special award that we give out as a Neighborhood Best Practices Conference for persons who exhibit what Dan Charles stood for. If anybody worked out in the community, they knew Dan Charles and what he stood for. He's a big-time community advocate. The Dan Charles Award is in memory of a kind and gentle man. And if I could have Ryan, if you could come on up here too. He was a great civic leader and did things in a big way that positively impacted the community. He was a mentor to many while keeping his finger on the pulse of the community. So for exhibiting these attributes and more, we would like to present Peggy Murphy with the Dan Charles Award. Come on up, Peggy. Get in the middle.
Thank you very much.
Get it? Okay. Want some words?
Yes, do you mind?
Yes, but you got to keep them quick.
All right. Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I did not expect this. They said come in so I could talk about the children. But to be honest with you, the decorations you have, the time that we spend out in the community working with the children, all my nice friends and everything, everyone that's come here that I've known for over the years, I would not be out here without my faith and without my family. And my husband, my son's here to help encourage me. And friends, my partner in crime, that and Gail and everyone, I just, I can't be up here, and I know that you all can't do what you're doing without all the support that we gather from one another. My neighborhood that was in here last night helping me clear up until the doors closed. It's just a blessing to be able to stand up here and to encourage you, keep going, even when the times get tough. And even whenever there's no money for funding, keep going because it's worth it for this next generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for all that you've been doing for so many years, and you're definitely deserving of the Dan Charles Award. So next, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today. It's Ian J. Beniston. He's a deputy director of the Youngstown Neighborhood Development. He's is responsible for the day-to-day operations of that organization. He brings 8 years of urban planning and development experience in the private and nonprofit and public sectors. Previously, Ian served as director of policy for the Mahoning Valley Organization Collaborative, and as a director of policy, he served as a consultant to the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation's board of directors, where he played an integral role in the creation and development of the organization. Proud to have with us and to speak on to us how he got things done, how he made it happen in Youngstown. Ian Beniston.
Thank you guys, thank you all. I have to disclose to you first off that when I accepted the invitation from Sharon and Napoleon, they did not tell me that I'd be speaking after the mayor of the largest city in Ohio. So I know that's a hard act to follow, but I'll do my very best for you guys here as soon as we switch the presentation. Real quickly, I do have one more introduction. I do have a community leader. You'll see his picture throughout this presentation, but if he could just raise his hand. His name's James London. He goes by Big Jim. If you take a look at him, I think you'll know why they call him Big Jim. So I want to talk to you today about revitalization and how we started it in Youngstown in one particular neighborhood through really an engaging process. When we started it, we didn't have any resources, organization, anything. I've heard some of you this morning in a similar situation just through going through some of the sessions. So I think you guys will be able to relate to everything here. As I said, my name's Ian. One thing that wasn't in my introduction, I did live in Columbus for a couple years. I am a graduate of Ohio State, so I do know the city a little bit well. I am a Buckeye. My brother does live here. He lives on the north side of Columbus at the intersection of Findlay and Clinton, so I'll be around. I work for an organization that is not very old. I'm assuming most of you know what a community development corporation is. In most places, they've been around a long time for a while. In Youngstown, we really didn't have much infrastructure for neighborhood revitalization, which was somewhat a challenge, but also a unique opportunity, which I'll talk about as I go through the presentation here. I do want to talk briefly about the context because I think many of you in this room have probably heard of Youngstown, but may not know what the condition is. Youngstown is a much different place than Columbus. Our community is not growing. We've lost about 60% of our population over the last 30 or 40 years. So in the 1930s, the city peaked in population at 170,000. Right now, it's at about 65,000 people. And really, all my life, that's all I experienced in the city was decline, things closing, things going away. My dad worked at the steel mill, which is a very typical story that you'll find in Youngstown. So, just some basic info. It was a steel town. Like I said, it had a population of 170,000, but the city had even more infrastructure than that. So the city has infrastructure for about 250,000 people. We have about a quarter, really, of what we need in terms of the citizenry, the residential base to support the city. You may have also known, some of you that are a little older, what was kind of the beginning of the major decline in the city. So in 1977, the first steel mill closed, probably following a 5-6 year period. Following that, all the steel mills closed. About 40,000 people lost their jobs. Like I said, my father lost his job in 1980. At that point, he had to, try and figure out another career. Most people in Youngstown just went to high school and went to the mill. So this is just a snapshot, really, of what that's done to the community. And if you look at this here, you see we've lost 60%, 60+% of our population. We have somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 vacant houses in the city. Now, today somebody told me that the whole city of Columbus has about 6,000 vacant houses. Well, you guys are 12 times our size, so you can kind of imagine, the severity of what we're dealing with. Poverty is extremely high and housing values are very low. I bought my house for less than $50,000 in somewhere that would be considered a good neighborhood. So the market values are very low. But for a long time, given these conditions, there was not much positive change in the community. I like to say it was stagnant. There was a report in the 90s, I was still a teenager, that said Youngstown was a community in waiting. I think I heard Napoleon and some others kind of say, they're waiting for someone to fix it. Oftentimes it's like you're always waiting for someone to come in and fix it. So there was a lot of stagnation in the community, and there wasn't much engagement. If there was, it was just people planning, but nothing ever came of it. I tell people we plan to do, we don't plan to plan. So what happened when we began work is that we knew we had to address this by building capacity, building some positive momentum in the community. So I want to tell you now really specifically how we did that in one neighborhood. This is the Idora neighborhood, so I think Napoleon, some of you others have probably heard of Idora Park on the south side of Youngstown. This is Idora Park right here. So this is the neighborhood all around it. It's not a huge area. It also borders the Metropolitan Park District. And when I started work here probably 7 years ago, it was about 26% vacant, so that means almost every 1 in 4 houses was vacant. So the first thing, like I said, that you have to do to begin to make some type of progress is to develop a plan. That was about 6 years ago that we began the process in this neighborhood. Also, the first time that folks started coming out again. But when we started the process, there was still a lot of non-believers. Oh, this is just more talk. Nothing's going to come of this. And one of the major things that we knew we needed to do through that planning process was identify some community leadership. So through the planning process, just outreach, the neighborhood meetings, we began to see, who was really interested in making change in their community. That's also when I met Jim. You can see him in this yellow shirt on the slide here. That was at one of the first meetings. Jim stood up and he picked up a piece of paper. Actually, I think it was a McGruff Crime Dog brochure. And he goes, "I want to start a block watch," like louder than I can even talk because he can bring all that air out there. So, I knew that I had to speak to that guy. I think it was about a week or so later, Jim, that he invited me to come over his house. And I think when I walked in, he offered me either a Jenny beer or a Kool-Aid. And, everything else is history from there. But there were many other people like him. And when Jim and I got together, we were able to bring more people into the fold and continue developing some leadership in the community, which also having that leadership enables you to develop capacity. So the neighborhood didn't really have any of its own capacity when we started, which you can't get very far without it. We also knew, Jim included, when we began talking, that we needed to move beyond the planning and get some immediate victories. Like I said, at that time, we didn't have an organization, we didn't have a development corporation, we didn't have any money. So how are we going to do that? So the community had articulated very clearly what many of the challenges were, and there are things that you all might suspect and deal with in your own neighborhoods, whether that be vacant housing or crime, jobs, just lack of services. And one of the things that came up loud and clear was about the crime, particularly on the commercial corridor. One of the reasons there wasn't much investment. We had a mile stretch in the neighborhood where there was 5 corner stores that didn't really sell anything much productive. Lots of cigarettes, alcohol. There was literally 5 within this one little section. One was a large source of crime. So neighbors repeatedly said that the store needed to be dealt with for anything ever to happen. So at that point, Jim had started to form, what he called a block watch. Now I think he kind of calls it a neighborhood association. They held a large community meeting. They invited all of the store owners. Only one showed up. That's his store right down there. You can see he had a building project that, was going on as long as I was alive that he never got around to finishing there. The others didn't take it seriously. This is just another group. They're not going to do anything. So because they didn't take it seriously, we knew we had to deal with it a different way, at which point we began about what's called a special option election to remove the liquor sales in particular precincts. That's one of the stores. That was the worst store, was called Party Pantry. There was literally everything from murder to drug sales out of the store there. I couldn't make it up if I tried any better. We did a special option election. That precinct for that election had the highest voter turnout in the city. 80% of the people in the precinct voted voted basically to shut the store by ending liquor sales in that precinct. So I think that was really a critical moment, not just in the neighborhood, but in the city. At that point, people really began to take notice of what was happening in the neighborhood, but people, even in other neighborhoods, I think, started to see that they could do some of these things on their own without resources. So you can see one of the other stores now, that's it, a little better, not perfect still, but definitely made some significant improvements. And since that first store, two of the other stores have been closed through varying methods of option elections and just working with the owners to change them. One is actually a different business now. Another will become something totally different altogether. So I think what's important about that first step is that was when the community really came back together and started to clearly state what the expectations were in the community, what the community was going to tolerate and what it would not tolerate. You know, things had gone on for so long and no one had really stood up. Now they were standing up. You know, I think one of the things Jim said is you can buy all these things in the neighborhood, you can't buy food. And also said, you know, this wouldn't be tolerated in Canfield, which is a suburban community. We're not going to take it here. So clearly setting the expectations is important. From there, we still didn't have any infrastructure, so we went on to deal with another issue, which is still an issue in the city. I imagine it's an issue here, too. We have a lot of absentee landlords. We have a lot of ownership from outside the city, outside the state, outside the country. I talked to people in Japan, New Zealand. Do you know where Youngstown is? Do you know the whole street is vacant? No, sir, I've never seen the property. So we began to deal with them as well. So this is one particular landlord. He owned over 300 properties in the city. You know, if it's up to me, they'd probably all be demolished. This is one of his houses. It's filled with tires and wide open. Again, just organized the residents, went about a process through community meetings, through just direct actions, going to his house. I talked to a gentleman here in Columbus that did something similar to really make him accountable. He called Jim and myself after that first meeting. Oh, please don't put me in the media. You know, never do that again. I'll do whatever you want. Next thing you know, about a half dozen houses, Jim, in the neighborhood started to be torn down, the others fixed up. So just through making him accountable for the conditions of his property, again, we're changing the neighborhood without anyone giving us any money or having an organization. That's Jim there. That's the Youngstown Vindicator, which is the main newspaper. You can see this was a major news story in the city. So I think, moving from there, the next place we kind of went to getting a little more sophisticated is understanding the problem. When we began, we didn't even have good data as to the issues in the neighborhood, what's actually going on, what's vacant, what's not. So we needed to collect all that. And, we could have just hired someone or had someone do it, but we really wanted to involve residents, engage the community. Jim and I did it ourselves. We had volunteers. And I think this is really important because if you enable people to become informed, they become engaged. A lot of people, they drive home, they don't really realize the condition of the neighborhood. So we surveyed the whole neighborhood, which kind of catapulted us to working to survey the whole city, which this, as I mentioned before, this is the condition of the city. So I know you saw the numbers. It's a little bit different when you look at a map. All the green is vacant lots. This is the south side of Youngstown, north side, east side, west side. Most of the green, with the exception of the northeast corner of the city, all had houses on it. There's 23,000 vacant lots. Like I said, there's somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000. That number changes daily, vacant houses. This is the neighborhood, at least in 2008. There was about 200 vacant homes. As of today, there's about 30. So you can see we've changed things dramatically, and we've had to do it in much more difficult conditions because we don't have a market, which is an advantage for you all here. You're in a somewhat, at least a growing community in places, and even if you can capture a small share of that, you can move forward. Through doing that, we also began to raise the level of accountability and transparency at all levels, so at city government as well. This is just something I wanted to highlight. This is a website now through our efforts. Anyone, Jim, myself, anyone that lives in the city, any of you guys, you can go check on the status of a house. For a long time, it was unclear to get answers. Is that going to be demolished? What is the code enforcement status? All of those things are very transparent and accessible now. So as far as where we went from here, we did get to a point where we realized, we needed to develop some real organizational capacity so we could deal with some of these issues at a larger scale and tackle some things that are more complex. I was at a session here at this conference this morning. Someone was talking about low-income housing tax credits. That's not something that a volunteer is going to take and do on their free time to rehab houses. So we knew that we needed to have some infrastructure, which led us, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I'm going to jump ahead if you don't mind, which led us to building, and this is real, I'm going to come back to that, but if you could just let me jump ahead and go back, which led us to building an organization. So the organization was called the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation. This enabled us to obtain grants, to obtain funding, to put a staff in place. But before we got that fully up and functional, we were continuing to build community through volunteers. So we'd done these direct actions. Now we were activating volunteers to do the work. You can see this is a house we board up. Jim was mentioning this to someone this morning. Whenever we board a house, we paint the doors and windows on, just so, if nothing else, the psychological value is dramatically different when you drive by. This house happens to unfortunately have been demolished, but this is all done by volunteers too. No one is paid to do this here. Everyone in this picture, everything that was done here, that was all volunteer efforts. Same thing with houses. We started painting houses with volunteers, senior citizens, low-income individuals. What this also started to do was bring people out of their houses in the neighborhood. There was a lady that, I fondly recall her the day she told me this is the most she's ever been out of her house in 12 years because she was afraid because of crime. Now there's a garden that she gardens in, which led, again, to the removal of some of the major criminal elements through the closing of the stores. There was a very violent gang in the neighborhood, which through this process, that also led to them no longer being active in the community. You can see it goes through everything. They were involved in murder, all the things you might think of. At the same time we were doing that, and you guys have talked obviously quite a bit about education and youth development. We know that too, and we value that. I mean, we don't run a school, but we do as much as we possibly can with youth. Jim has a 4-H group called the Idora Wildcats, which is the name of the old roller coaster. You can see some of the kids here, but they do everything from building things, being trained in small construction, to raising bees. They're actually building a shed here, to helping senior citizens. There's a thing called the Senior Support Team where they cut the grass of elderly residents. This happens to be one of the women that they cut the grass for her. These are the kids that maintain her yard, remove leaves, anything that they can do to help the neighborhood, but also builds the community. It gets the people together just through work. I mean, you can't engage a community just through having a public meeting or once every time you're going to do a plan. It has to be an ongoing process where you bring, and some people don't want to go to a meeting. Some people are like me, they want to go out and work. So you have to provide all different avenues. So we continued to do that. We also started building a professional organization, which I thankfully had the opportunity to be involved with that from the start. And we knew we wanted to continue on the same trajectory of improving the neighborhood, really with the residents at the center. So everything even we do as an organization is grounded in the residents, and our home, our office is right in the neighborhood, even though we're a citywide organization. But this is kind of our philosophy. It's performance-based. We're not just looking for funding just to give ourselves a job. We're very much results-driven. We want to use data. We want to show. I don't want to be here just telling you we changed the neighborhood. I want to show you the data that I can prove it. So we're very much results-oriented, and we also know that given the scale of the challenges, we have to incrementally implement our vision. It's not going to happen overnight. We have a overwhelming distress, overwhelming poverty in our city. We have to do this slowly, we have to do it methodically, but we can't lose sight of what the bigger picture, what the vision is. So as an organization now, we have all kinds of efforts, and all of these things that I'm going to run through very quickly, I know I don't have too much time, are all in one neighborhood. So now, even as an organization, we tear down houses. We also use a targeted approach for reinvesting on blocks. We don't really do things hodgepodge. One thing growing up in the city that always agitated me, I never understood it, is I see brand new homes and then I see 5 vacant homes falling over across the street, and to me that was always common sense. When people tell me, oh, that's just how things work, no, that's not, you have to think. So that's what we do. This is we call it a model block approach, where we don't just fix a house that's vacant, but we demolish the one we can't fix. We work with low, moderate income, elderly homeowners to fix the homes that are already occupied. And this is also important because what we're doing is primarily about the people that are already there. Those are the most important folks to us. And this neighborhood, some people would call it a gritty neighborhood. We're not looking to make it any kind of place that we're going to have massive investment that's going to fall out of the sky. This is continue to be this kind of place where people can sustain themselves. So we also acquire and rehab vacant housing. You can see some of these. We have a home ownership program now, and this is all in Jim's neighborhood, which is known as the Idora neighborhood. We actually can provide our own mortgages. We started a year ago a $1 million mortgage fund, so I can provide you a mortgage just like a bank. It's actually serviced by a local bank. And this was started out of a need. We identified that most banks either weren't lending in certain areas of the city, of the community, and also there was kind of a place where people, for whatever reasons, you talked about credit or whatnot, couldn't get loans, but many of those folks with the proper training, with the proper ongoing counseling, could actually become successful as homeowners. So through that, you also have to put funds in a repair account and continue to go to counseling over a 5-year period. But everyone has been very successful. These are all actual people that have gone through our loan fund. So you can see it's diverse, young, old, black, white families of varying sizes that have been able to move in and been able to purchase a home because we've been able to put that together. That's my favorite photo. That's like the picture perfect family there. We also, like I said, we started painting homes with volunteers. We now do it with contractors, and we've gone from doing it in just one neighborhood to doing it citywide. We actually started a program through our efforts called Paint Youngstown. Last year we painted and put roofs on about 150 houses across the city. So now we're not only trying to work in the Idora neighborhood, but across the city. You can just see the roof. If you don't have a roof, you don't have a house. So these are all just basic things that we knew we had to deal with. And we had to target it into the neighborhood so we could better the conditions all around. Again, we do continue to emphasize volunteer and community capacity. We have our office in the neighborhood. We have a training facility there. We're also working on a workshop where residents can come right there, do small construction projects, cut wood. You saw the house with the painted windows. That can all be done right on site at our office here. And we're working on the workshop right now. This is one of the least expensive but most impactful things that we do, call it vacant lot stabilization. For a long time in the city, a house was just torn down and nothing was really done to the lot. And it was never really even in a condition where you could run your lawnmower over it. If you did, it would die. So we cleaned the lots up a little better, planted grass and trees, also added the split rail fencing, worked with our land bank to transfer them. The reason I also want to emphasize why we put that fencing up, and I don't know if this is quite as much of an issue in Columbus, but we have an issue with dumping in the city. You put that fencing up, Jim can verify this, that it eliminates the dumping. People aren't going to back their truck through a post and rail fence. So it also identifies the lots and begins to foster a sense of ownership and maintenance, which is also key to, kind of reinvigorating those community standards. You have to demonstrate that the community is owned and maintained. So this is just another example of that. You look, I don't know if you can even tell, but there is an abandoned house behind the trees. We call that a feral home. It's just wild and overgrown. We tore that down. That's what it looks like now. You can see the boarded house next to it. That's gone now too. So again, we're just continuing to go through the process. And when you drive, what's different about this neighborhood, even though it's had the vacancy than other neighborhoods, when you drive through it now, all these lots are maintained either by an owner or by a crew that we have of young guys, in some cases girls too, from the community that cut the grass. You don't know that there was all this blight there before. We also have community gardens. This is several in this Idora neighborhood and other places of the city, and have looked quite extensively into urban agriculture. We know it's not the silver bullet, but it is a way for folks to access healthier food. This was actually a research garden we did with Ohio State, looking at soil conditions. One of the issues, as you might know, you have when you have vacant lots is the soil is highly compacted and lacks organic matter. And I don't want to geek out too much on soil science, but we wanted to find ways for grassroots people, everyday people, to cost effectively be able to use vacant lots and safely do it. So that's what this project was about. Also wanted to clean up our commercial corridor. The corridor is full of stagnant lots, abandoned buildings. We needed to change that. We needed to, when people ask me, well, what are you doing in that neighborhood? I give them an oversimplified answer. We're just cleaning it up, which is really still the phase we're in. We're cleaning it up. We're laying the groundwork for something bigger in the future. So this was a commercial lot. Now you can see there's grass on it. There's a sign. If you look at that, these are all people from the neighborhood. Again, we want to highlight positive things from the neighborhood. This is a 100-foot long mural. These are all people that live right in that neighborhood. People told Jim and I, well, that's going to get graffiti. There's no graffiti on that mural 2 years later. People are proud of that. People come up to that and, they want to see themselves. There are positive things happening on the south side of Youngstown, despite what you might hear. Again, we've taken that to a citywide scale and are doing that through micro grants to neighborhood groups across the city. Like I said, we have a crew of young men that helps maintain the lots that we can't transfer to adjacent owners because sometimes we have a lot that's between two rental properties or derelict property owners that we're not going to give them land. These guys maintain it. We've also, again, with volunteers, just built a new park. There's some of the kids there. This was just done a couple weeks ago. So this has many amenities, a rock climbing wall, basketball court, green space, things that were lacking in the neighborhood. We've also, within the neighborhood, again, all these things are in that one, if you remember that map I showed you, they're all in the neighborhood. Developed an urban farm, not just for the neighborhood, but for the whole city. At the farm, we train people through a program we have from across the city, then they can do similar things in their neighborhood. So this is on a fairly well-traveled east-west corridor. It was a blighted house that sat on about 2 acres. And this is on a street that brings you from the west side of Youngstown, which you're familiar with Youngstown, you'll know that the west side is historically considered a stable area. I tell everyone this was the billboard that kind of said, welcome to the south side. It was up on a hill, and when you saw it, it was boarded up and continually got worse. You can see trees falling over on it. Well, we bought it without a clear vision of what exactly would happen to it, but we knew it was a key property. This is kind of a funny aside, but the property was actually owned by a corporation in Hawaii. I contacted them, no response. Finally, I found the registered agent through the Hawaii Secretary of State. He was unresponsive. I started calling his employer. Finally, I got a response. Finally, he agreed to sell it. At the time he agreed to sell it, he also goes, well, Ian, I have this house on East Lucius. Do you want that too? No, sir, we're really not working in that area, but I'll take a look at it. I go over there, and it's a vacant lot. So, again, that goes back to he paid $18,000 for a vacant lot. So that's a major challenge, though, the lack of local community ownership, which is something we needed to change. You can see we boarded it up so we could mothball it. Then we have tons of activity going on there now. We do have a 2-acre functioning farm. The number of people working there fluctuates, but over the summer we had about 20 people. they're all paid too. Those aren't volunteer positions. And we have a number of training programs too that folks can go through to do similar things in their own neighborhoods. This was one of the training programs, a Green Jobs training program. This young gentleman, he now is employed. I actually just saw him last week. He works for a contractor that we use, fixes houses. He has a car now. He has a GED. He didn't have any of that 2 years ago. Thank you. This is also on the site. We're growing food. Something else we needed to do was teach people how to use it. Many folks, we can teach them to grow food, but particularly younger people, I find, don't know what to do with various types of fresh vegetables. So we developed a community kitchen, which we're just finishing up. This is also the vacant house now. It's our office. You can see the sign. And so instead of seeing a boarded up house now, you see a huge 2-acre campus. And this is a map of what we've done in the neighborhood, really starting from nothing. That's what I want to emphasize too. It wasn't myself coming in with a bunch of resources or Jim. It was a core group of people within the neighborhood that we were able to identify that really got all this started. And 4 years later, we've gone from having more than 200 vacant homes to 30-some. We've gone from having corner stores and crime to having the first new grocery store being constructed since I've been alive in the neighborhood, in the whole city too, not just in the neighborhood, to having an office there, getting young people involved, reducing crime by 60%. So all of these things are possible, and it doesn't start. I heard someone this morning say, to do all that, you need money. Well, at some point you need money, but to start, you don't need money. You just have to have a commitment, have a passion, and be willing to stand up like Jim did at that meeting and say you want to start a block walk. This is some of our results just in the neighborhood. There's about 100 homes at this point that have been repaired or rehabilitated. Unfortunately, we've had to tear well over 100 down. That's a result of the condition, but also a result of the overall weak market. We not only live in a shrinking city, we live in a shrinking region. So we can't sustain all those homes. We have to remove many of them from the market. Boarded up probably close to 100 homes now, 175 vacant lots returned to reuse. So those are the pictures I showed you with the split rail fence. You'll find that all through the neighborhood. Just some more stats. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you get the picture. I do want to highlight some of these. So like I said at the beginning, vacancy was 26%, probably more towards 5% in the neighborhood now. You can also see a dramatic decrease in crime. And if we compare this neighborhood to another census tract on the south side where we've done nothing, crime has actually gone up over the same period. So you can see these are significant numbers and there's data behind them. It's not anything that I'm making up, but all of these other things too, increased home ownership in the neighborhood, just anything that you can possibly think of, we've been trying to work on. There's still challenges though. I don't want to leave you thinking there's not challenges. I think these are some of the key lessons. You have to continually engage the community. Engagement is not just a public meeting. It's not just fulfilling whatever duty you have because you're doing a plan or doing a project. It really needs to be more than that, and it never ends. It's not a point in time. It's a process. And I think that if you really go about an engagement process that's sincere, you'll find that through that, residents can actually add to capacity. They can add to what's going on, bring value, and accelerate it. So just some lessons there. I think other things that are important for keeping people engaged from the outset are having transparency, having accessibility. When we started all of this, everyone said, like I said, nothing's ever going to happen. That's just because of how things were. It was hard to get information. Things never really went anywhere. And then something that's most important probably is have fun. We try to do that in everything from the actions to just the graphics we use. I mean, even when we have work days, we have a truck, an old bread truck, a bakery donated. It says Revitalize real big on it and has a clown horn on it. Just the graphics we use. We try to make it fun and get people involved because, it is hard work, but you have to have some fun while you're doing it. Again, just a brief recap of everything I've gone over. The change must benefit the residents that are already there first and foremost. So in any type of project that you're doing, that needs to be the primary driver. You also have to start with a plan, identify leaders, build capacity, and go about it incrementally. You're not going to do these things overnight. Then the last thing I put on here is get the funding, but don't chase it. We've grown from having no funding to having competed for every type of federal, local, state, national grant. Our organization now has funding from the Kresge Foundation, which is a national foundation, every local foundation in Youngstown, state agencies, federal agencies. So you do have to get to a point where you need the funding, but you don't need it to start. So that's all I got for you now. I do want to say go Bucks. Hopefully we're going to win tonight. I do have one other announcement. This is my contact information. There is a ton of information on our website too. If I could direct you one place, that's where it would be. It's very simple, www.yndc.org. But there's also my phone number and email on there. Thank you.
Wow, that was excellent. I mean, if you don't have good ideas from that, I don't know what to tell you, because that's some amazing work that he's done there and continues to do. So a lot of great ideas, and I think we might have to bring him over from Youngstown to kind of help us out in our communities here, get us going. If you guys could give them a round of applause, please.
We can do it. You can too.
Yeah, we make it happen. You can too.